After years of scrimping and saving, Emily and I finally managed to buy our first house. It felt like a huge win. We were officially homeowners. But the excitement took a weird turn real fast. Right at closing, just as we were getting ready to celebrate, Emily's parents showed up with huge smiles and a cake that said, "Welcome home." We figured they were just being sweet. Then Linda hit us with it. Surprise. We bought the house next door. At first, I laughed, thinking it was a weird joke. I mean, who does that? Then Ronald handed me this rolled-up set of blueprints like he was unveiling a master plan. I unrolled it, and there it was, an actual, detailed layout showing a gate between their backyard and ours. Not only had they planned it, they'd already built it. We tried to be cool about it at first. They claimed it was all about being helpful down the line, something about future grandkids and convenience. But that convenience quickly turned into chaos. Before long, that little gate became their personal entryway into our lives. Linda would pop in without warning, throwing shade about our lawn or the flower beds. Ronald treated our shed like it was community property. No heads up, no asking, just walked in like he owned the place. Then came the noise. They'd throw these loud parties that overflowed into our yard, like our space was just an extension of theirs. We asked, nicely at first, for some boundaries. They just brushed it off with, "Come on, we're family." I put a lock on the gate. The next day, it was mysteriously gone. So I installed a full fence, hoping that would finally draw a line. Instead, they called the HOA and complained that it didn't match the neighborhood aesthetic. We were boxed in, literally and figuratively. That's when I started keeping track of everything. Photos, videos, timestamps, the whole 9 yards. Eventually, I sat down with a real estate attorney who confirmed it. What they'd done with the gate was totally against city codes. I filed formal complaints with the city and the HOA. And then I got a little creative. I set up motion-triggered sprinklers aimed right at that gate. I planted thorn bushes along the fence line, just inside our property. And yeah, I started throwing some loud get-togethers of my own, invited all my buddies with motorcycles and big speakers. If they wanted to play that game, I'd play it better. Soon enough, the city slapped them with fines for the unapproved construction. The HOA followed up with official warnings. Their property value dipped. A few months later, they put the house up for sale. When that for sale sign went up, we grilled burgers in the backyard and toasted with cold beer, finally feeling like we'd reclaimed our little slice of peace and quiet. But we celebrated too soon. All the fines, the public embarrassment, it must have rubbed them the wrong way. Because that's when things started to get weird. About a week after their house went on the market, I stepped outside one morning to find our trash bins knocked over, garbage scattered all over. I figured maybe a raccoon had gone dumpster diving. Then I checked the footage on our security camera. It was Ronald. At exactly 3:17 a.m., he strolled out in a bathrobe, casually flipped over both bins, looked around like he was just checking the weather, and walked off like nothing had happened. I sent the clip to the HOA. Their response? "We'll investigate." Nothing came of it. That same week, Linda took things up a notch. She started spreading rumors around the neighborhood, telling folks that Emily and I were rude and confrontational, that we shouted at her over the fence, that we were somehow trying to destroy the community vibe. We only found out thanks to this sweet older couple across the street who brought over cookies and a ton of awkward questions. Then we noticed something else. Every time we left the house for more than an hour, it looked like someone had been poking around in our yard. Stuff was moved. Lights unplugged. Tools out of place. So I put up new hidden cameras, and sure enough, we caught him again. Ronald had a key, not just to the gate, but to our shed. Turns out he'd been copying it and sneaking in to mess with our stuff. Just little things, enough to drive us nuts without causing any real damage. I changed the locks. Twice. Eventually, I bolted the whole thing shut from the inside. I called Ronald out right there in front of some of the other neighbors. He just looked me dead in the eye, smirked like he knew something I didn't, and said, "You ought to watch that attitude. Around here, people notice things." It didn't sound like a warning, it felt more like a promise. And I think he meant it in the creepiest, most literal way possible. Not long after that, we started seeing this silver sedan. It would park across the street from our house at random times. No one we knew drove it. It wasn't a neighbor's car, that much was clear. I started snapping pictures whenever it showed up. Same guy inside every time. He never got out, never did anything. Just sat there, staring, watching. I told Emily about it, and she totally freaked out. She didn't want to call the cops, though she was worried we'd come off as paranoid or dramatic. But in my gut, I knew this wasn't just about some neighborhood squabble anymore. Ronald wasn't just playing games. He needed control. He thrived on it. And then something happened that completely threw me off. The house next door? It didn't sell after all. Ronald and Linda suddenly pulled it off the market. So at a neighborhood barbecue, I played nice and casually asked Linda what changed their minds. She leaned in close, gave me this icy smile, and said something I'll never forget. We're staying. We figured it's better to be near the grandkids. Here's the thing, we don't even have kids. Emily and I had been trying, but we kept that private. Only our immediate family knew. And we hadn't told anyone that it wasn't going well. Yet somehow they knew. And they used that information like a knife. That night, Emily broke down. She sobbed in my arms, telling me she felt like we were surrounded, like they were in every corner of our lives. She stopped wanting to go outside. Couldn't even enjoy our own backyard anymore. That house, our dream home we'd worked 10 years to buy, felt like a cage. We started fighting. Constantly. She said I should have done more to stop them earlier. I told her I needed her to back me up when I first talked about getting a lawyer involved. One night, she packed a bag and stayed at her sister's place. That was my breaking point. I decided right then and there that I wasn't going to just sit back and let this happen anymore. I spent the next 2 weekends in city records. I read everything: zoning regulations, HOA rules, complaint logs, property boundaries. I even started meeting with real estate agents. Then I talked to another one. And after that, I went to a city council meeting, the kind where anyone can speak, and I laid it all out. I brought up the illegal gate they installed. I brought up the surveillance, the weird behavior, the harassment. I had video proof clear as day that Ronald had put up that gate 3 weeks before they officially bought the house, which meant he trespassed onto property he didn't even own yet. That got the council's attention real quick. The very next day, I reached out to a local blogger who runs a small watchdog site focused on our community. I gave him everything I had. Didn't take long at all for the story to blow up. The headline was brutal: suburban nightmare. In-laws from hell move in next door. Install secret gate. He posted photos, video clips, even my full written statement. And just like that, it was all out there. Then the local news station picked up the story. And just like that, everything shifted. Ronald and Linda weren't walking around with that smug attitude anymore. You could feel it. People in the neighborhood started looking at them differently, like the curtain had been pulled back. HOA meetings turned into battlegrounds. At one point, someone even egged their car. Linda ended up in the front yard, crying and shouting at Emily. How could you do this to us? Like we were the villains in their story. But here's the thing, that was just the beginning. For a couple weeks after the blog post started making the rounds, things went eerily quiet. No more trash tossed into our yard. No weird stares through the blinds. Not even a single passive-aggressive comment. They kept to themselves. Heads down. It almost felt like normal life again, like Emily and I could finally breathe without waiting for the next weird thing to happen. Then we got a letter. Certified. Legal. It was from a lawyer. Ronald and Linda were suing us for defamation, of all things. They claimed we'd ruined their reputation and caused them emotional distress. On top of that, they said the failed home sale cost them tens of thousands, and they blamed it entirely on us: the blog post, the news coverage, all of it. They were painting us as the masterminds behind their public humiliation. Emily absolutely lost it. I mean, I didn't even know it was possible to sue your own daughter and son-in-law just for telling the truth. We got our own lawyers right away. No hesitation. During the discovery part of the case, our legal team requested access to their emails and texts. And that's when everything flipped. Buried in the messages were exchanges between Linda and someone named TJ. Turns out TJ was the real estate agent who originally listed their house. The stuff they found? It was chilling. Linda wrote, "They'll never see this coming. Once we're next door, we'll raise the grandkids right." TJ replied, "You sure the gate won't be a problem?" Linda answered, "I've already got the contractor lined up before we even close. The gate will be in before they move. They won't get a say." Then this one. "Once they're worn down enough, they'll want out. We'll make them an offer. Friendly discount. Everyone wins." They weren't just being nosy or controlling. They had a full-on plan to take our house. They wanted to push us to the edge, get us to sell out of frustration, and then swoop in to buy the home we spent a decade building, just so they could extend their little empire of control right into our backyard. When Emily read those messages, something in her just shut off. She didn't cry, didn't yell. She went completely quiet, like a switch had flipped and all the warmth drained out of her. Not sad, not angry, just cold. I sat there watching as Emily started firing off texts. Her sister, her brother, a couple cousins, she was rallying the troops. Within the hour, we had a full-on support squad. Turns out, we weren't the only ones with a story. Apparently, Ronald and Linda had pulled these kinds of power plays on other family members too. Not quite as extreme as what they were doing to us, but the pattern was there. They'd just never taken it this far before. That was the last straw for Emily. She decided it was time to take everything public. No more quiet suffering. She reached out to the same journalist who wrote the original blog post and gave him everything we had. Emails, the gate photos, security footage, all the legal documents from the lawsuit, the whole twisted story. A new article dropped. In-laws from hell, the plot to steal their own daughter's home. This time, it wasn't just local gossip. ABC's local affiliate ran the story next. Then it got picked up nationally. And then, out of nowhere, a podcaster who specializes in real estate horror stories reached out for an interview. Suddenly, Ronald and Linda were internet famous for all the wrong reasons. The day after the video went viral, Ronald and Linda dropped the lawsuit. Just like that. But it still wasn't over. The HOA called an emergency meeting. Everyone showed up. Tension was thick in the air. Neighbors demanded that the illegal gate come down immediately. One of the board members said, "This isn't even about fences or property lines anymore. It's about trust." The board voted unanimously, 9-0, to have the gate removed. Ronald tried to protest, yelling about family rights and some nonsense about legacy planning. No one was having it. The contractors rolled in the next morning. By lunchtime, the gate was gone. That same night, someone spray-painted a message on their fence. "Family doesn't stalk family." I have no idea who did it. Honestly, I didn't lose any sleep over it. Just when it seemed like we might finally catch our breath, there was a knock on our door. A city inspector stood there, holding a clipboard and looking confused. Ronald and Linda had filed an official complaint claiming we had an illegal shed extension on our property. We didn't. They even included fake photos and said we had unpermitted electrical work, trying to make it sound dangerous. But this time, we were ready for them. I handed the inspector a flash drive, real blueprints, all the city permits, and even a 2-minute security cam clip. It showed Ronald creeping onto our lawn in the middle of the night, measuring things with a tape like some kind of backyard goblin. The inspector didn't say much, just nodded, took the flash drive, and left. A few days later, the police showed up. But they weren't just stopping by to chat. They had a warrant. See, Ronald had gone too far. Those doctored photos he submitted in the shed complaint? That wasn't just shady, that was fraud. He'd passed them off as evidence to a city office, which made it a criminal offense. The cops arrested him right there on our street for filing a false report and trespassing. Again, Linda came running out, filming everything with her phone, yelling like she was starring in her own true crime series. This is harassment. We're the real victims here. But nobody was listening anymore. The neighbors came out onto their porches, stood quietly on their lawns, just watching it all unfold. I'll never forget that moment. Ronald in handcuffs, getting placed in the back of a squad car. And Emily? She didn't say a word. She just watched. Cold, steady. Ronald ended up getting charged. Nothing major, but enough to land a permanent mark on his record. Linda lost it online. She went on these long, wild rants all over social media, blaming fake news, calling the neighborhood a bunch of toxic snakes, even posting pictures of us with captions like, "Would you trust these people around your kids?" That was the last match she needed to light the final bridge. Then she showed up at a city council meeting, uninvited, and started screaming at the mayor about backyard tyranny. Someone filmed it, of course. Went viral. Again. At that point, even their own family cut them loose. Emily's sister blocked them. Her cousins stopped returning texts. And then, in the most poetic moment of the whole saga, Linda's own brother told her, "Maybe it's time you looked in the mirror." A month later, we got a letter in the mail. Ronald and Linda were moving. They offered to let us buy their house before it hit the market. Tried to play it off like they were being generous, said they thought it was only fair to give us first rights. "Let's restore harmony in the family," they wrote. "Let's put this behind us." The price? $50,000 above market value. That was it for Emily. She didn't cry, didn't get mad. She just laughed, this cold, dry laugh I'd never heard come out of her before. It wasn't joy. It was something sharper. Then she looked at me and said she had a plan. We didn't buy their house. Not even close. Instead, I called up a buddy of mine from college. He's in real estate development. He didn't want to move in. He wanted to turn it into a short-term rental for traveling nurses and medical folks doing rotations at the hospital. And we helped make that happen. We gave him everything we knew about the property, helped him cut through the red tape with the HOA, pushed for a variance to allow longer guest stays. The HOA, still furious over everything Ronald and Linda had pulled, approved it without blinking. By the time their listing went live, it was common knowledge that the place would become a revolving door of out-of-towners. The neighborhood buzzed with it. Potential buyers came by, Googled the address, saw the blog posts, the news clips, the cameras we still had mounted, and walked away. The house sat on the market for weeks, then months. No serious offers. Eventually, they had to sell for $90,000 less than what they paid. To our friend. First thing he did, painted the whole exterior a loud modern teal. Totally clashed with every beige and taupe house on the block. You couldn't miss it. Ronald and Linda moved out. Ended up in a rundown duplex 2 towns over. No HOA. No family. No control. Do I regret anything? Yeah. I regret not putting up a fence the day they bought that house. I regret laughing when they first showed us those ridiculous blueprints. I regret thinking we could be civil. But I don't regret the revenge. Sometimes, you've got to be the villain in someone else's story to finally be the hero in your own. Emily and I still live in that house. We rebuilt what they tried to tear down. We planted new trees. Got a dog. And that gate? Long gone. But the spot where it used to be? We marked it. We put a little stone statue there, a garden gnome, holding a tiny wooden sign. It says, "No trespassing." Not even you, Grandma.